Maseches Bobekame Daf Pei Ches Amud Aleph. We are in the middle of Pei Ches Amud Aleph, a little bit below the middle of the page. I would start with the word She'enoi. The line starts with the word She'enoi. It's a good 10 lines or more from the bottom of the narrow lines. She'enoi b'chol hamitzvah suposu la'oid. So let's give a small recap of yesterday. We said yesterday, there's Machloikis, Rabbi and Rabbanon, whether an Eved, the slave, whether the Eved, if one injures an Eved, does he have to pay boishes or not? Tanakama, Chachomim, the mainstream opinion, they say you have to pay the Eved, the boishes, and Rabbi said, no, you don't. Why? It's not because of any svaros or reasons. The reason is Pashut, the way you interpret the Torah. The Torah says, Ki notzu anoshim yachtav ish ve'ochiv. A man and his brother fight, and then there was boishes, and you got to pay the boishes, lady. So now the question is an Eved called a brother or not called a brother? According to Rabbanon, he is called a brother. Why is he called a brother? Because he's achiv Torah b'mitzvahs. Because Lamaisa, he's supposed to fulfill most of the mitzvahs, same mitzvahs as a woman does, plus bris milah. Mimela, he is Lamaisa Jewish. And Eved Knani is, I would say, the lowest echelon in the society, but he's called Jewish, the Eved Knani. And that's what Chachamim say, it's called a chicha. While Rabbi says, no, he's not a chicha. Why is he not called a chicha? Because he has no yichus. Doesn't mean yichus is not the grandson of Rosh Yeshiva and a Rebbe. It means that the Eved Knaini has no yichus either way, not upstairs and not downstairs. An Eved Knaini is not called his father's son because once he did his half conversion to Yiddishkeit by doing Mila and Tvila, and he's considered to be partially Jewish, as we said, so he's not considered his father's son. And also the Eved Knaini is the only one whose children are not called his children halachically. The children, they are an entity of their own. They are not considered to be the children of the Eved Knaini. So because an Eved Knaini is not called someone, and also the Eved Knaini, before that, Eved Knaini cannot marry anybody from the Jewish nation. So it's not a brother. He can have a very, very nice Eved Knaini with good midos, from the midos machine. But Lamaisa, that Eved Knaini cannot marry any Jewish girl whatsoever. Only a Shifcha Knainis, otherwise it's a Doraisa, but Yekdesha. So Mimela, Eved Knani is not called your brother because of those Nekudas that he cannot marry a Jewish girl, not call your brother, says Rabbi Yehuda. Now the Gemara continued, and the Gemara had a question. Excuse me, says the Gemara. We are in the line starting She'enoi. But we're not yet going there. We asked a question on Rabbanon. We know, and that's already stated in different places in Shas, that an Eved Knaini cannot give edus. An Eved Knaini is not kosher, is not eligible to give edus. Can be a very nice guy, no edus ben Eved Knaini. There's a question about edus achoidesh, leave that alone. Regular edus, he cannot, say that someone smoked on Shabbos and therefore you're going to kill the guy. Why? Why not? That's a good question. Bishlam Malafi Rabbi Yehuda, I understand. Because an Eved Knaini is not called a chicha. And by edus, the word achicha is mentioned. Yekasher zomam lasos le'ochiv. Ach is mentioned. You know who called himself Ach in Israeli politics lately? I won't tell you. So then what? So then comes the question of Rabbanon. According to Rabbanon, that an Eved is an Ach, is a brother. Why can't he be kosher edus? Right? That's a question. So we try to learn it from a woman in a koton. An Isha and a Koton, they cannot give edus, and they're not, so to speak, fully observant, meaning the biggest tzedekis in the world is not mechuyev in all the mitzvahs, because the woman does not do all the mitzvahs. A Koton doesn't do any mitzvah, except for the mitzvah of bris milah that's done to him, and he's considered to be, according to some, the chosan of the bris milah. It's a question, by the way. So the Koton is like the bris milah. But in a woman in a cotton, they're not going all the mitzvahs. So to Eved Knaini, he doesn't keep all the mitzvahs, and therefore he should not be kosher le'edus. That's what we want to say. I was once at a bris of the son of I wasn't his own. I was wanting my friend's bris, my friend's son's bris, and the very, very Choshva Talmid Chochem, Rabbi Nadav Peretz, he's a very, very big guy who lives here in the neighborhood. Not many people know him. And he said that there's a question, there's a Chakira, who's called the Chosan of the Bris Milah? At a wedding, we know who the Chosan is, and we know who the Kala is, yeah? Yeah, the Chosan, who's the main guy of the Chasana? The photographer, of course, the video guy, he's the main guy. So then, the Chosan of the Chasana we know, and what? And the when it comes to Bris Milah, the question is, who's the Baal Simcha? Is it the father of the baby or the baby himself? This time I'm saying Geshen Ezach in the side. So the baby, although he does not perform the mitzvah is his mitzvah as a human being is in the baby. And that's a whole issue which I never went into. Lo mashane. But b'chol mikra, the woman and the boy are posuleidus because they don't keep all the mitzvahs. So too is the Eved. That's what we wanted to say. Then the Gemara, okay, frag the Gemara, Malat Sad Ashove Shebahen, line starts with a Shove, Sheken Eino Ish. A woman and a child are not called Ish. They are not grown men. They're not men. Tomer be'Eved Shu Ish. An Eved, with all his shortcomings, because the Eved is definitely less than a woman. Who's more? Rebbetzin Kanievsky or some Eved Knani. Of course, Rebbetzin Kanievsky or any woman, the more choshev than an Eved. But Lemaisa, the Torah does say, Omdu Shneha Anoshim. Anoshim. Anoshim are men, adult men, grown men. So maybe an Eved Knani should be kosher leidus. It's true that he shares common denominator with a woman in a cotton. Why? Because all three don't fulfill all the mitzvahs and not supposed to. But Lamaisa, just because they cannot give edus, does not automatically reflect on him that he cannot give edus either, because he's Lamaisa, a grown man, and it says in the Torah when it comes to edim, shnei anoshim, not shnei anoshim, only anoshim. Therefore, the Gemara wants to change and tweak. Ella, teisi migazlan. Oh, we can learn from a gazlan. Who's a gazlan? A gazlan is a thief. A gazlan is a person that everybody knows is very dishonest in his business, or he outright goes and steals from people. He works for a certain department in the area, okay, and what? And he steals from people. And then what happens next? That gazlan, what does he do? Can he give edus? No, no. It says, "Toshes yodcho, yeah, Rasha v'chulei eid chomos." You can't toshes yodcho. Don't give your hand. Don't basically cooperate and accept edus from a person who's corrupt, a person who's not mekayim the mitzvahs. For example, a gazlan. Very nice. Now, this gazlan is a grown man, and you know what? The gazlan is a person who's allowed to marry. When it comes to marriage, a person comes to Beis Din and he says, "Hi, I'm a gazlan." He wears a shirt. He even participates in the parade of the gazlanim, the proud to be thieves. Yeah. So then what? With a flag. And what? That's going to be the next thing. So then that gazlan is allowed to marry whoever he wants. I mean, you better warn her. I hope she knows who she's getting into. But a gazlan has no pesul chitun. As opposed to a mamzer, as opposed to an eved, as opposed to, what's her name with a kohen, a grusha, a gazlan can marry whoever he wants. And therefore, a gazlan, I would say, Tesimi gazlan, look, a gazlan. Rashi says here, gazlan, a gazlan is allowed to marry whoever he wants, yeah, and yet posula edus, yeah, he's posula edus, he's not allowed to give edus. So mimela, I would say like this: a gazlan, maybe a gazlan, just like a gazlan cannot give edus, so too, all the more so, the eved that cannot marry whoever he wants, of course, should be posula edus. A gazlan is better than an eved. Why? Because a gazlan can marry whoever he wants, and yet his posula edus. Kol sheken, an eved that cannot marry, he's not achicha. He's not achicha because why? Because he cannot marry other girls. He cannot marry girls unless the shifcha. So therefore, that eved should not be able to give edus either. Says the Gemara, that sounds a bit convoluted. L'choira. Says the Gemara, mapitom. It's not the same. Mal gazlan, the Gemara is now rejecting this. Mazla gazlan shken ma'asav gol muloi. A Gazlan has a reason why he cannot give Eidus because Ma'asav Go Maloi. His own deeds, his own bad deeds caused him to not be able to give Eidus. Because we caught him stealing in the supermarket and we caught him writing, I don't know, forged checks, and he's a known Gazlan in town. That's why he cannot give Eidus, because he is a bad boy. Toimer be'eved, Mashenkin an Eved, Shen Ma'asav Go Maloi, an Eved can be a nice guy, not necessarily did anything wrong. And Eved, the reason why he cannot get married is his status, is not his maisim. So therefore, you cannot prove from a Gazlan. In other words, a Gazlan cannot give Eidus because he's a crook. That's why he cannot give Eidus. Mashenkin the Eved maybe could give Eidus. Maybe the Eved could give Eidus. Why? Because the fact that he can't marry other people, can't marry free girls, Baschor, that doesn't mean anything. What does Gazlan have to do with anything? A Gazlan is crooked. We don't allow him to testify in court because he's a Rosha. And an Eved is not a Rosha. He does say, by the way, that Avodim are Becheskas Gazlonim. We thought it was a comment that the vast majority of Avodim are Gazlonim. But that's not the reason why the apostle Eidus. Get what I'm saying? Here we want to say it's because of the status. Even if you find an Eved that's as yosher, as honest as Chaim Kanevsky, Lamais, it still would be Osir, yeah, because he's an Eved. It's not Gormuloy. It's Meduik in the Gemara. If you look at the words of the Gemara, his deeds, his bad deeds, are not what causes him anything bad. So maybe we're still stuck, my friends. Maybe an Eved can give Eidus. A Koton and a woman, they don't do, what are they? They're not grown men. He's a grown man. A Gazlan is a grown man, but a Gazlan is a bad guy. The Eved is A, good guy, possibly, or nothing to do with his deeds. B, he's a grown man. He's an adult man. So let Eved give Eidus. According to Rabbanon, who claimed that an Eved is a brother, is an ach, question mark. Yeah. Answers the Gemara. Now we bring everybody into the party and everything will be sorted out. Ela, line starts with Gormu. Ela teisi migazlan umichad mehanach. You know how we know Eved is possible? If we bring all three into the story against Gazlan, then we know Gazlan cannot give Eidus. What do I mean? Gazlan does not fulfill all the mitzvahs. Well, he's supposed to, but he's not. He's a very frum guy, but Lamaisa, we know that he doesn't. He's a declared Gazlan. We know he doesn't fulfill all the mitzvahs. And what about a woman and a koton? Oh, they could be the biggest tzaddik in the world, but they're also not fully observant. Why are they fully observant? Because they're not supposed to observe everything. Yeah, those women are not supposed to have tefillin on their heads. In other words, so when it comes to Gazlan, that's a formula. Plus women are koton. What's the common denominator between all of them? All of them, or none of them, keeps all the mitzvahs. And that's why they cannot give Eidus. People who are not fully in the Torah mitzvah 613, which means including an adult man. Hey, don't come with your male chauvinist card. Even the adult man, could be a very big adult man, very adult and very manly, but Lamaisa doesn't keep all the mitzvahs. He shaves with a tar. He shaves with a, how do you call this knife? No, razor blade. Yeah, razor blade. Right, with a razor blade, he's not allowed to give Eidus, and the Isha Bekoton are not allowed. So we find a very big common denominator. People who don't keep all the mitzvahs cannot give Eidus. And the Eved is the same. Even though Eved keeps more mitzvahs than a woman, because he has the mitzvahs of a woman plus bris milah. And he also keeps more than a koton, obviously. But an Eved does not keep mitzvahs to their full. Okay, he's not supposed to. Nobody's angry with him. And that's why the Eved also cannot give the Eidus. 1 second, I saw you. The Eved is an ach. Very nice. Eved ze'ach. Remember the stickers? Eved ze'ach. So then what? The Eved is a brother. Very nice. Brother. But Lamaisa, and you pay him boishes. Because of that, we pay him boishes. We respect him. And if he was put into embarrassment, we pay him. The money is going to go to the other. That's a different story. But Lamaisa, he gets the money. So then what? But when it comes to Eidus, he's not fully Mekayim the mitzvahs. That's why he doesn't give Eidus. The next time people ask you, why can't women give testimony in Beis Din? You tell them because the woman is not in all the mitzvahs. Only people who keep all mitzvahs supposed to and are Mekayim all the mitzvahs, they give Eidus, otherwise no. Rabbi Reins wants to tell us something very important. Yeah. Now comes another answer. A completely different answer is now in the horizon. I'm sorry that people in the screen cannot really see what's going on behind. I'm trying. Okay, whatever. Maybe I'll make a chart. I don't have time though. Now, let me give you a small introduction to understand the next answer, Bezos Hashem, of Ma'abed Ravina. He comes to explain why is it that avodim are not allowed to be made. I mean, they're allowed to maybe, but it won't be accepted. While the edus of an eved is not accepted in Beis Din. So the truth is, I started off left foot today. The first answer doesn't say it's because they don't have children or fathers. It's because they can't marry. That was the first answer, and then it evolved into other issues of them not making all the mitzvahs. Okay, fine. Now comes another answer. The Torah says, before we begin, let's read the pasuk. I'm sorry about my Hebrew, but English handwriting is better than my Hebrew one, actually, you know. Layumsu avos albanim literally means fathers should not die over their sons, whatever that means, or because of their sons. The banim layumsu al avos. Banim, sons, should not die because of the fathers. What does that mean? Ish bechetoy yomus. Yeah, ish bechetoy yumsu. Each one should die because of his own sin. What does that mean? So allegorically, it may mean that sons don't die because of the sins of the fathers, but the Gemara says, maybe in Sanhedrin, remember, that's pashut. Of course, if a son broke Shabbos, the father broke Shabbos, the son's not going to die. So what do we learn from this pasuk before we come into today's Gemara? We learn two things, and these are things we have to know. Liyum So'ova Sabonim means testimony of sons. Sons, sons' testimony, edus, does not work for the father. In other words, Liyum So'ova al Bonim on the edus of the Bonim. If a son comes to Beis Din and he says, hey, I saw my father, and I'm objective, I don't even know my father. Only yesterday I discovered he's my father. I don't know, I lived somewhere else yet. And what? No feelings either way. I claim I'm objective, and so does the psychologist. And what? And I'm telling you that my father, he smoked yesterday on Shabbos. And here I have another friend who's a complete stranger, and we saw dad smoking on Shabbos. Are we going to take what? No, it's not because of Nagia. It's not because of Nagia. I'm sorry there are two different psulim. There's Nagia and there's Korov. It's two different psulim. Even if in theory he's not Nagia, which is very hard to imagine, the mere fact he's a blood relative of first degree or second degree, it's the whole thing, then he's pasul edus. Okay? Why? Because of this biblical verse. Because it says Lo yum tu avos al bonim. Yeah, the son's testimony does not help the father, is not functional for the father, and vice versa. Bonim lo yum sol avos. Yeah, the father's testimony ain't working. Father testimony, does not work for the zin, for the son. The father says, my son smoked on Shabbos, please kill him, I don't have koich anymore. And then what? And then what? Very uneducational. So the father is not believed. It's not because of being objective, subjective. I'm sorry. It's a whole thing in Sanhedrin. There's a kosuv that a close relative cannot testify, and you need it both directions. What? Then so are not made. They are the plaintiffs are not made. They come to Beis Din and they claim our son Ben Sar Moira, and we claim he's not listening to us and he stole Tartimar Basar Be'ana Italki. But other people have to come and be made that the parents are right. The parents are the plaintiffs, are not the Eidim. It's one of the most idiotic things in the Goyish courts when a man is made on himself, or is not made. You can say he's claiming, he's not testifying. It has to be, as you said, objective and not related. How can a person say, I made them and I get shield? Yet it's nonsense. Made means like you see something objective from the side. So this is like the first layer of the cake before we even enter our sugya. Okay, very nice. Comes the Gemara. Ma'abed Ravina Omar. Omar Kro. The pasuk says, Lo yumsu avos al bonim. And he comes with a new drasha, an additional drasha. Lo yumsu, nobody can die, listening carefully to my words, nobody should die al pi avos she'en lahem chayis bonim, which means a second, there are two drashas. A second drasha for lo yumsu avos al bonim is to exclude Eved, to exclude Eved's Edus, to exclude the slave. Why? What does Eved have to do with sons and fathers? Ovus ubonim. He doesn't go to Ovus ubonim. Loyumsu Ovus bonim. Ein lochayis bonim, which means, I don't know exactly the good word in English, lineage, whatever. The father, who's an Eved, who is the biological father of his children are not called his children. Halachically, he's the only kind of Jew in the world whose children are not considered halachically is. You can go to 10 labs of DNA and gynecologists, whatever, lo meshane. He's not called halachically the father. Zir masusim, zir mosim, there's psukim, there are reasons, there are makoros. Therefore, the Torah alludes to lo yumsu ovei salbanim. You cannot kill anybody, not just another Eved. Nobody can be killed, meaning executed as a result of the testimony of a person who has no bonim. Who has no bonim, halachically, even if he has 10 children, that is the Eved. So really, there are two drashas learned from one pasuk. Ooh, what happened? Two psukim, two halachas learned from one pasuk. That's not the way I learned. Frag the Gemara. I'm asking the hidden question. How can you learn two things from one pasuk? That usually doesn't kind of work. Answers the Gemara my question. If you want to tell me that the only drasha is drasha number one, that's the only drasha, don't kill a father because of the edus of his son. If that's the only drasha, then you know what the Torah should have written. Lichtav Rachmana, the Torah should have written, Leyumsu Ovasal Bnei Hen. If you want to talk about the close relationship between the father and the son, it should have said a father should not die because of the edus of their children, of their sons. My bonim. Why does it say Ovasu bonim in a more general way? Bnei Hem is specifically just to tell me the son's edus over the father. But bonim means a general term, not just his son is possible. There's somebody who's possible for everybody. You know who that is? Who is the general psul of bonim in general? Shma mino. Bonim, full stop. He comes to tell me it's a description. Ovasal bonim is not a case. Oh, that's a good one. Baruch Hashem. Hashem gave me this into my brains right now. Case number one is a case. In case when the son talks about his father, we don't believe him, we throw him out the window. That's a case. Number two is not a case, it's a definition. Ovasal bonim means we define Eved as someone with no children, and as such, he's posula edus. He's a lower level guy. I'm sorry, I'm not being nice to 2022. He's a lower level. Eved Knaini, what can you do? His children are not his children, and therefore that's the way we describe him. And that's a second drasha we'll learn from there. We don't say bnei hem, we say bonim. Bonim means in general. It's not talking about one father about his own son. It talks about a guy of bonim in general. That is to say the Eved. So because the Torah twists and kilu changes the word, and that we've seen many, many, many times in the Gemara, right? That we add a letter and that comes to, or take away a letter, we change the text to include one more drasha. And you can have two drashas from the same place. So far, so good. So far, it's easy. We'll learn two things from Lo Yum Sov Salvanim. That is, first of all, the son cannot testify over his father. What he can do, he can try if he wants to, but won't listen to him. And the second thing is an Eved, since he has no bonim halachically, he cannot testify over anybody. All very nice. Greg the Gemara, the pasuk has a second part. The Torah wasn't stam writing this for fun. What are you going to do now with the second part of the pasuk? Lo yumsu bonim al ovois. What are you going to do with bonim and ovois? Greg the Gemara, ela me'ata. According to your logic, ela me'ata, according to what you're telling me now, we are 4 lines from the bottom of the narrow lines. Ela me'ata. Ubonim lo yumsu al ovois. Which drasha we have bonim lo yumsu al ovois? Drasha number 1, we already came ready-made, is if the father says, my son smoked yesterday on Shabbos, and what can I do? We tried anything. Yeah, smoked on Shabbos, 2 AD, me and my neighbor, we saw him, we warned him. B'vakasha, go and do whatever you have to do. We don't hear the father saying that. That's number 1. But wait a second. If you want to tell me that, here comes the question. So that's drasha number 1. Drasha number 2, which is in a big question mark, here you should exclude Just like in this case, you excluded somebody who has no halachic children. Here, you should exclude somebody who has no halachic father. Who in halacha has no halachic father, even though it's his biological father? Starts with an M. His last name starts with Mek. No. How can you forget Tim McKenzie? I don't believe it. No. Mamzer has a father and not a nice guy. Here's Tim. Tim, where have you been all these years? Tim, we missed you. So Tim McKenzie, I don't know if you know, Tim McKenzie became a ger many times. Yeah. Tim McKenzie has a son. You don't know his son, Avram McKenzie. He studied in Esha Torah, very nice guy. So now, Tim McKenzie and Avram McKenzie, they're a very good relationship. And Avram McKenzie, very mechabed the father. He used to be called something else, Elvin McKenzie. And now, but halachically, Tim is not the father of Avram McKenzie. Yershin is Garke, Koten Shanoilon, Yavom Samach Beis. So now, Frek the Gemara, are you going to suggest to me now that a ger is poseledus? Avram McKenzie, became a big Talmid Chacham. He has a family of 10 children, and he is mamish Rosh Hashiva. So now you're going to tell me this guy, the ger, is not kosher leidus? Because according to your logic so far, that's what you're leading us, mister. You're leading us to say, just like here, a person who's no children, who's an eved, cannot be made. So a person, bonim Allah voice, with the same logic, are you passing the ger? Are you passing the convert? And you want to tell me that the ger is posel leidus? Maybe, yeah, he's posel leidus because he has no father halachically. Yeah, he only has to be mechabed the father because of chilul Hashem. Otherwise, no. Of course, he has to give covet to his goyish father because otherwise the goyish father will say, "I said all along, the Jews are." If it's quick and very lenient because we're in the middle of things, but again, we're in Soramora. Yeah, I'm listening. Let's continue. Ella ger line starts with the ger. Achinami the postu le. No, sorry. Elamata. Let's start Elamata. Elamata. According to you, bonim lo yum solovos. But the same logic, the second part of the posuk, achinami lo yum sol tibonim she'enem chais ovos. Children who don't have lineage, who don't have halachic connection to the fathers, are posuleidus. Yeah, you know what's going to happen now. Ela ger achinam de posuleidus, which we never found in halacha. We have our assumptions when we learn the Gemara. We know Mishnais. We know lo matzina that a ger is posuleidus. A ger cannot be a dayan in Beis Din of Eser Mishloisho, but it can be an aid. So a ger is posuleidus. According to your logic, that's what's going to happen, and that kind of doesn't sound right. Amri, so they answered, Achi Ashta, is it the same? This answer is twofold, is a twofold answer. Answer number, the beginning of the answer comes to differentiate between ger and an eved, and to show you that a ger is better. Why? Ger, Hachi Ashta, you know what Hachi Ashta is? Hachi Ashta is whenever we break a comparison, whenever we make a distinction. Is it the same? Ger, Nehide Elochais Lamala, although the ger has no yichus going above, going upwards, which means that Avraham McKenzie is not called Tim's son. Lemata yesh l'chayis. Of course, the 10 kindalach, all beautiful, very frum children of Avraham McKenzie, are his children. Yeah, he is a full Jew. Of course, his children are completely halachically his children. So the ger is only missing half a picture. La puki eved, as opposed to eved, then luchai lo lemala below lemata. An eved has no yichus in either direction. Why? His father is not his father because the ger is because an eved is like a ger. He was taken to captivity. Now he's an eved knaini. He's not connected to his father, who was a real knaini. And also his children are not his children. So the eved is worse. However, that's not the full answer. Don't let the Gemara trick you. Lamaisa, this is a nice distinction which we're going to use later. But the question is still a question. Now it's my turn to ask. Yep. Now I'm asking a question. So what? Still, the pasuk says lo yumsu bonim lo yumsu avois, right? So it only talks about a person who has no father. It's very nice that Avraham McKenzie has 10 children, or his halachic children, and all very beautiful. And this, so what? Lamaisa, still, I would say that a ger should be possible because the Torah specifically says, yeah, bonim al avois. He has no av, so maybe he still should be possible. It's a hidden question here. Now comes the real bomb. Now we're going to throw a bomb, which is a little bit hard to dismantle. So let's go. Answers the Gemara. No, frag the Gemara. If you still want to insist and say, like I just told you, maybe a ger should still be posuleidus. I know that ger is better than an eved. He's better than an eved. So what? But the second part of the pasuk is very beautifully divided into two sections, right? The first one is somebody who has no children, that's an Eved. And the second one is somebody who has no parents, and that's the ger. So the ger can be the best guy in the world, and he has 10 children. So what? Don't sell me stories. At the end of the day, this ger has no father, so maybe he should be possible edus. Excuse me. Answers the Gemara, nice and slow. Nice and slow comes the answer. Here comes the answer, and that's the final story. Yeah. If you think so, if this is what you want to say, Lichtav Rachmana, the Torah should have written, Layumsu Ovosal B'neihem. Remember the beginning of the pasuk? Layumsu Ovosal Bonim comes to add what? To tell me that that an Eved is possible. Says the Gemara, why do you have to worry about it? And why does the beginning of the pasuk have to tell me a special word Bonim to exclude the Eved? I would say no. Right, B'neihem. And only have the first drosha that the son's edus is invalid, and I would know myself in a kal v'chomer from the seifa to the reisha. Let's see how we build it. Like Kedamrinan lo yumsu be'edus bonim. Yeah, I would say the first part of the pasuk should only exclude this, the bad edus. And an eved, I don't need the pasuk to exclude eved. You know why? Benichtav rachmano bonim lo yumsol ovois. Do write the second part of the pasuk. Children don't die al ovis dishmas minotrei. If you want to tell me that the second part of the pasuk comes to exclude the ger, I would already know eved automatically from ger. If this is like you want to claim that the second part comes to say that the big tzaddik Avraham McKenzie Rosh Yeshiva with 10 children who has halachic children and he's possible edus, kol sheken v'kol sheken, that an eved who's twice as bad as him because he has no father and no children, of course it would be possible. So this pasuk, my friend, is redundant. So Trey, I would have learned from the second part of the pasuk both ger and kol sheken eved. Look at the Gemara. Chada lo yumsu bonim be'edus ovos. That's for sure. As we said, the father gives edus. My son smoked marijuana in Park Ayalon on Shabbos. Please kill him. We don't accept it. Ve'idach. And the other drasha should be lo yumsu al pi bonim she'en laim chayis ovois. That is who the ger. If you really want to claim that the ger is in the story, okay, thank you. Let's accept and say that ger is not accepted to edus because why? He has no father. And then this is completely redundant, this whole business here. The eved, nafkale bekal v'chomer miger. I would have learned eved kal v'chomer from ger. Uma ger de lamalahu de en lo chayis, aval lemata yesh lo chayis. A ger that has no father but has children is 50% okay in the yichus story, and yet possible edus, and yet disqualified. Eved, boy, boy, boy. Eved is 100% bad when it comes to yichus. Eved she'en lo chayis lo lemala v'lo lemata. And Eved has no yichus upstairs or downstairs. And Eved has no father and no children. And didn't she apostle edus, right? Of course, it's possible edus, right? So if you want to tell me that ger is possible from the second part of the pasuk, Bolshekin and Eved is possible. So why do you need to write bonim to exclude Eved? Screaming over here. Why do you have to exclude Eved specifically? He's automatically excluded from the second part of the pasuk. Ela, punchline. Because of Rachmana liyumsu ovosal bonim, the mashma liyumsu pi ovos she'en lo chayis bonim. If the Torah specifically spent a word bonim, it's a whole word in the Torah, to tell me to exclude the Eved mefurish in the Torah, shma mino, that is to tell me only Eved. Eved she'en lo chayis lo lemala v'lo lemata, an Eved which is 100% this bad, 100% yichusless, upstairs and downstairs. Who the apostle edus? He's the one apostle edus. But the ger came and the yesh lo chayis lemata. A ger, because he has a yachas downstairs, which means he has children, kosher le'edus. Let's summarize. You want to claim maybe the second part of the pasuk excludes the ger and takes ger out of the window and tell me a ger is posel le'edus? Cool. But you know what that means? That I would automatically derive from here, if a ger is posel, hold the more so Eved, who's literally, mathematically, twice as posel as ger, of course should be posel le'edus. Why did the Torah have to write it? Why did the Torah have to spend an extra word bonim to exclude the Eved? We know it already from here. The mere fact that upstairs the Torah specifically took care and actually excluded Eved, that means to say that ger is not excluded.
Because had ger been excluded, they wouldn't have needed the Torah to tell me that. They would have known it from my own logic. So Bela, the second pasuk, no. A ger is good. A ger can use. We have no such drasha. No, a ger can be made. A ger is not disqualified from the pasuk, and a ger really is a nice guy, and he can be made in Beis Din. Now, lemais it's difficult. But lemais the pasuk does say ovois, and not ovois say him. So for the Gemara, it's nice and logical, but still, so why did the Torah write ovois? Right? If the Torah just wants to tell me that the father's edus is possible, should have written avois say him, their father, the father of Yankale, who smoked drugs in Park Ayalon and Shabbos, he is possible to be made of his son. Yeah? Avois say him. But you don't write avois say him. You write ovois. Ovois sounds to be talking about a definition of ger. But we don't want to say the ger is excluded. So what do? Very easy answer. The Torah should have written lo yimsu al avois say him, because the only thing you learn is one father on his child. Why did the Torah change the lashon and wrote a more general lashon fathers, which does indicate the mashma lo yimsu pibonim shenlam chais avois? Does smell as if we're talking here about defining someone who has no father, and his name is Avraham Aledager, the Mackenzie. Yeah. Answers the Gemara, stylistic. I did the cause of Luyum Sobas Albanim, cause of Nami Bonim Luyum Solovos. As much as the Torah doesn't spare words and doesn't this and that, Lamaisa, the Torah also wants to maintain a consistent, homogenic style. And because the beginning of the pasuk spoke about Bonim, and it has to speak about Bonim, because it comes to exclude two things. The Torah at the end also wrote a voice in order to maintain the same style grammatically, stylistically, and it says a voice and not a voice say him. But really, there's only one thing we learn from here: the father's edus over his son. But again, he's out of the loop. Mazel tov. A ger can give edus, and a ger can give edus that he saw someone, saw someone eating chazir and gets malchus. He saw someone killing loleinu. Yes. You okay? Fine. You're with the phone. What's that? No, halachically his children are his. He doesn't have to have children. That's a dayan. It's a different story. And it's a definition. Nobody says he has to have children. A ger maybe never got married. A ger, because a ger can have halachic children who will be his children halachically, he's in a higher status than an eved, right? And he doesn't have a father halachically. That we don't care about. That we don't learn from avos. That's not learned from the word avos. It's just a stylistic word. Okay. What does that have to do with anything? If an eved violates a Jewish woman, then what? That's very bad. No, so they're her children and not his. No, the eved's children are never his, whether it's from the shifcha or from a Jewish girl. It's called lotia kedesha. He's not allowed to marry a Jewish girl, and she's over an avera of lotia kedesha. You good? Say that. Yeah.
There and his children.
Yeah.
They both.
So we're done with the Eved, and we basically concluded that an Eved is Poseledus, the Kul Alma, and the Ger is Kosher Ledus, and that's about it. What about if you hit an Eved and he was put into shame, he was embarrassed? We pass it like Rabbanon, not like Rebuda, and you have to pay the Eved, the Boishes, okay? Which would probably go to his master. I say probably because the Eved can get, the Odin can give him money if he wants to. It's not an Isser. Which is a done thing, it automatically goes to the Odin. Next piece, next quote from the Mishnah. We said the Cher Shot of a Koton B'Gyosan Ra. What did we say? A Koton, it's B'Gyosan Ra, they're bad news. In other words, if you hit the Koton, you have to pay. And if the Koton hits you, he doesn't have to pay. Why doesn't he have to pay? Because he has no money. What about a woman? We said that a woman who, let's say, she smacked someone hard and she injured him. So if you smack a woman, of course you have to pay. And if the woman smacks you and she's married, she doesn't have to pay. Why not? Because we assume she has no money. The assumption is it's her husband's money, and the husband is not mechuyev to pay for what she did. So what's going to happen? You wait until she gets divorced, or until maybe she makes sure to get divorced, or what? Or the husband dies, and then then the choiv that's pending will come to fruition, and she'll have to pay the debt that she accumulated when she was married. Okay? Is it true that women never have money? That's not true. For example, we have and that's an up and coming case now. One of the few cases where a woman has money partially is called, as we saw many, many times in Bava Basra, all over Shas, nichse milug. We're not going to many other options of women having money because it's not the issue right now. But nichse milug means what? Limlog. It's not a word in Hebrew, by the way. In modern Hebrew, is like limlok, is to cut. Yeah. Moleg or molek is to cut. Nichse milug means nechosim that are divided between a woman and a husband. Let's say a woman, before she got married, she was a big real estate dealer, not just a dealer. She owned houses, property, and she owns a house. She owns a $100 million house in where? In California. $100 million house. And what? That's cheap. And now she got married. So what's going to happen now? Unless known otherwise, in the Ksuba, there are different options of how they divide the money. She's supposed to bring the money to the marriage and not keep it to herself, although she can do it, but that's not normally the done thing. And therefore we say, nichse milug, the body belongs to the woman. The body of the neches belongs to the woman, not to him, to the wife. And the payros are divided. The payros belongs to the husband. In that case, $100 million house, he can rent it out. How much does it cost per month to live in such a house? I don't know. A lot of money. Yeah, more than even more than Harnof. And what? And now the cash that the the tenants give the couple, that goes to the husband. And with that money, he's supposed to support her. Okay, so Lamaisa, what's nichse milug? This is money, assets belonging to the woman. The body of it belongs to her. He's not allowed to sell it without her knowing. He's not allowed to change it. He's not allowed to, for sure, damage it or do things without her knowledge. She is the owner, but he cashes in the payros, the fruit that grow in the garden of the 100 million, or the cash that comes in every month from the tenants, that goes to the husband. The goof is hers, and the payros are his. That's nichse milug. Okay. Story time. Ime de Rav Shmuel bar Abba Mehagrunia. The mother of Rav Shmuel bar Abba Mehagrunia, Avas Nesiva le Rab Abba. So she married Rav Abba. Very nice. A different Rav Abba. She married a man. I guess it was second marriage. She married a man called Rav Abba. Savtinu lenichse le Rav Shmuel bar Abba bra. She wrote her money. What does that mean? She wrote off, and she basically, either by selling or probably by matana, she said to her son, when I die, then it's going to be yours. In other words, I'm selling you my nichse milug, which are now owned by me. And sorry. My second husband has the payros, that goes to you. I'm writing the nechosim, that neches, that asset to you. Once I close my eyes forever, that will belong to you, my dear son. Okay. However, the husband is not completely out of the picture because he has the payros, right? He has payros. He's collecting the fruits, the goods, yeah? And we have an opinion, which we'll see later on, kinyan payros, kinyan a guf dami. Remember, some people say if you own the payros, it's as if you have a stronghold also in the body of the neches itself. So now started an argument after she died. Poster the shchiva. One day, that lady actually died. That rich woman died. Ozdal Rav Shmuel bar Abba, who is her, son, Ozdal Rav Shmuel bar Abba, Kamei de Birmia. He went to Rabbi Yirmiyah. 1 second, 1 minute. Rav Shmuel bar Abba, I just want to make sure something. 1 minute. Sorry. Yeah. We're Peches Amud Beis. Also, Rav Shmuel bar Abba, her son, Rav Shmuel bar Abba, he wants to get the. It's by the way. I knew what I wanted to say. I wanted to avoid, to already pre-avoid lechatchila. Don't make mistakes here. He's not her yoirish. He's not her heir, because when a woman dies, the money goes to the surviving husband. If there's no husband, it goes to the children. The first person gets his husband. We're not talking here about straightforward Yerusha, because the husband is alive. The husband is alive. So now the son is not supposed to get the money automatically because of inheritance of Yerusha. That's not, I'm just coming to say, leave that alone and please don't ask it because it's just not the story. The story here is he comes to Beis Din and say, listen, my mommy gave me a gift. My mommy gave me a gift. What's a gift? She said, after she dies, I'm going to get the money that used to be hers and the Paris was her husband's. Now it's mine. And he went to Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, which was like a dayan. Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba said, yes, you get it? Yes, you got the trophy. You should now, oimed, you should stand in her nechasim. You're allowed to be now, you are the legal owner of the nechasim because she gave them to you when she was still alive. She gave them to you for after she dies. Ozal Rab Abba. Rab Abba didn't like it. Who's Rab Abba? The hubby, the husband. The husband, he went and he got a different psak. Ozal Rab Abba, Omer Lamil Sakameda of Hoshia. Rab Abba said the story over to Rav Hoshia. Didn't say it went to the entire, but he spoke over to Rav Hoshia. Ozal Rav Hoshia, Omer Kameda Rav Yehuda. Rav Hoshia passed on the question, the shaila, to Rav Yehuda. Omer lay, and then Rav Yehuda said, Hachika Omer Shmuel. This is what Shmuel said against the psak of Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Ha'isha shemocha b'nichsa milug, a woman who sold nichsa milug b'chaya bailo when a husband was still alive, and the husband had some kind of some foothold over there, because of the parents, umesa, and she died. Habal moitzi miyad lekuchois. The husband can say, if my wife sold her nichsa milug when she was alive, it's an invalid sale. Says Rashi something, I don't regret what I said because it's true, Baruch. Rashi's adding another thing. Look at Rashi, at first Rashi. Abal moitzi. Why can the Baal take it out of the lukuchans and say the whole sale is annulled? You know why? Shabal yoirish es ishtoi. The Baal is the only legal heir of his wife, as long as he's survived her. He's like the first lokach. In other words, because some people say that if you remember Yeshnochlin, you can sell stuff for after the death. After the death, the first thing that happens after death is the guy closes his eyes and the Yorshim get it. The Yorshim can say, regardless whether it's husband, wife, children, we're going to discuss it. Lamaisa, nothing doing. We are the first ones before he came. Everybody knows when it comes to Mechira, it's a rat race. Who comes first? The husband, who is the, so to speak, natural halachic yorush of the woman, can say, I am first here because I'm just a natural yorush. She sold you for after she died. That's like selling you, as we say in English, the castles in the air, igdalim ba'avir. That's not valid. And therefore, here comes machloikas. And therefore, he wants to question the psak of Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba and say, no, the son should not get it. The father should get it because her sale was invalid. I also agree with you because of Paris. We'll discuss it later. So now they approach Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba and he said, Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, with all the respect, you said the psak that it goes to the son. No, it should go to the husband because Lamaisa, he's always first. He always catches before anybody else catches. Omer lehu, you coming to me with who? Who said that? Shmuel? With all the respect, Ana masnisa yadana. I know a Mishnah. I have a Mishnah that endorses me. Shmuel is very choshuv, but I have a Mishnah to support my opinion that a sale, a post-death sale, post-mortem, post-death experience, post-death mechira does help, and therefore it should go to the son and should not remain by the husband. What does this Mishnah say? Bam, 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 bam. Tomorrow, we meet Hashem 10:25. Everybody's welcome to my shiur tomorrow about dogs. With all the makoros and the halachos about whether it's a good thing to own a dog or not. Don't be scared. Actually, it's allowed, but there's a lot of reservations there. But don't worry, it's not going to be